In homeschooling, I learned so much just walking around beside my kid. The only thing that made me better than them was that I had the answer key. As long as mom has the answer key, I can do math, I can do science, you've got that answer key and they don't have it. So that makes you look very smart.
Yeah.
So that's my number one thing that I tell parents who are freaked out is you have the answer key.
Hey, welcome back. Daniel Moss here, host of the Homeschool Collab Podcast. And this week we have Julie Nalle on the show, who is the owner operator of BiblioPlan, which is a interesting company. They got like a history program curriculum that has like a classical approach with a Charlotte Mason, kind of twist in there. So it's interesting, and I enjoy her. The conversation we had, her take on homeschooling and education, and yeah, she's got some kind of refreshing takes on things. So I want you to check out the episode and leave some comments down below. Let us know what you're thinking about it, and hope you enjoy the show. So we ran into you at the California, Ontario Homeschool Convention. Do you like bounce around? Because I know there's a lot of those conventions. Do you guys bounce around, do them all, or?
So my company is doing about 22 this year.
Wow.
And I personally am going to 11 of them. I'm done
Wow.
though. As of this past weekend, I'm done.
So 2025, you've got that in the bag.
We still have a few more that my company will be there, but I
Yeah.
will not be there.
Nice.
So
Okay. Is that like conventions that are just farther away, or they're just small enough to where it's like it's not worth it for you to be there?
no, it just works out that I can only do so many. So I
Mm.
just kind of, figure out which ones I'm going to go to, and then I have people that cover the ones that I'm not. So, and mainly it has to do with speaking. If I'm going to
Um,
speak, I'll go. If I'm not speaking, then I'm going to have somebody else do it for me.
gotcha.
So
Okay, that's great. And then when you speak, what do you usually talk? Is it like a standard speech that your go-to, or like that kind of thing,
I
or?
have a wide range. So
Okay.
I speak about there's one that I do that is just specifically about how to do BiblioPlan, but I don't do that very
Okay.
often. I do one the one that's most popular is one that's called multi-age, multi-grade without mom losing her mind. And
Oh,
it's designed to help moms and dads know how to do lots of different subjects all together with everybody around the table. So
okay.
it's not necessarily just about my curriculum. It's about how you can do science and all these different vocabulary, all these different subjects, and just give people moms a lot of tips for how to do it. That's a pretty popular one
Mm,
because there's a lot of families that have more than one child, and so how can I, get them
mm,
together around the table and homeschool them? So that's pretty popular. I do one that's my passion. That's why, that kind of is my story and why I think doing history and literature the way that we do it is so important. I do several on special needs. I do something on special needs every year.
okay.
Um, special readers, or how you can work with your kids, or and then I do one sometimes on how the different types of homeschooling, I mean the different philosophies behind homeschooling, and how you can pick and choose what you want to do. So I have a wide range.
Yeah.
I do one that I really enjoy that's just storytelling. Um, so
Teaching the art of storytelling, like that kind of thing.
no, it's just stories.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
stories about giants of the faith who have either gave their lives or committed their lives to sharing the gospel, and
Um,
I love that one. So
yeah. That's really cool. You are okay. So you're a whiz, huh? You're just
no,
like. So what's your story then?
I'm just 63.
Okay. So
So I've been
you
around
read a
the
couple
block a bit.
books. Okay. Yeah. So did you homeschool your kids?
So I have an education degree,
Okay.
and I was the mom that was not going to homeschool.
Okay.
I was like, absolutely, it went against everything that I learned in school. I graduated in 85, and
Okay.
homeschooling was just starting at that point.
Yeah.
And so as an educator, it was a dirty word.
Hmm.
It was like, oh, those people, those parents who are that they're gonna be unsocialized, and the parents don't know how to teach, and
Yeah.
so I kind of went at it. So when I had my kids, I was going to put them in school, but not public school in our area, because it I didn't like the public school here. And so I had to choose a private school where there was only one option.
Mm.
And so we went with that option. I put my son in it, my oldest, And after the first day, I was like, it was awful because it was super strict and super boring curriculum. And but he was very social and he made friends right
Mm,
away. And so it was really hard for me to pull him out until he hit the year where he was unhappy. So then
okay.
we pulled him out, and that's when we started homeschooling. So we kind of got jumped
Wow.
into the deep end of it really fast. Like halfway
Mm,
through the year, we're homeschooling.
wow.
So I can relate to a lot of parents who are like, I don't know what I'm doing, and they're just starting out because I had no prep. And even though I have an education degree, homeschooling is very different
Mm,
than just, using my skills in teaching.
mm.
So yeah, so that was fun.
Yeah, I mean that just sparked about 25 questions right there. Um, oh my gosh, I got overload. Okay. So how many kids do you have, first of all?
I have five. I
You have
have
five kids. Okay.
two that are biological, two sons, and then I have three that we adopted from Ukraine. So that's
Oh
going to spark
wow.
a whole lot of questions too.
Wow.
All
Okay.
three of my adopted kids are special needs,
Okay.
which was something that we deliberately did.
Yeah.
And so two of them are now 21 this
Okay.
summer, and the other one is 14.
Wow.
She's about five emotionally.
Mm.
So she has severe epilepsy and autism. So we've got, we deal with a lot with her. So
Yeah. Okay. Uh, when you okay, first of all, it's funny when you say that in the 80s about homeschooling because I had caught wind of it probably around third grade. And so that was probably 88, 89, somewhere around there, something like that. And I remember at the time hearing about it, but it was like all the kids, at least the way I understood it, the way it was kind of explained to me, it was all the kids who were like problem kids, right? And they were the rejects that no school really wanted. So maybe there was some element of that where it's like, hey, they got pushed out of the system, so they had to homeschool. I don't really know, but I was fine with that. I wanted to be homeschooled. I said to my mom, please, I guess there's this thing. And I really wanted to do, I could not stand being in a classroom. It was horrible for me. And then when it came time to having kids, it was like, I'm not putting my kids in there. I don't care no matter what, it's not happening. And it was really hard and really overwhelming at the beginning to your point. And but did you hear back in the day, were you hearing about like John Holt and Raymond and Dorothy Moore? Do you know those names? You never
no,
came across them. Okay. Because the people who ended up mentoring me when I started homeschooling, I was 24. At that point I had a 5-year-old, I guess like a 2 and a 1-year-old, something like that.
you
And
got married early.
we started way too young. We were naughty, we were bad. We didn't do everything how we should have done it. And but yeah, so we started young. And and then, one of the benefits of starting young was like kind of ending young, but then we ended up having our fourth kid, like a surprise kid a little later, and it kind of then pushed back. It was like, wait, we were supposed to end young. What happened here? But that didn't happen exactly that way, but um so I went for a while, and I was a 24-year-old dad who was like a flunky in school, and really not any skills to speak of, no education to speak of, no motivation, no aim. I just knew my kids weren't going to be in public schools. I just knew that. And really, I just want to play video games all day long. I mean, that's just really the truth of how it was at the beginning. It didn't stay that way, but that's how it started. And I didn't even ruin my kids with that beginning, like it's amazing. But so along came these mentors of mine out here in California, Marty and Carolyn Forte, and they're like kind of like homeschool legend. Or where are you located, by the way?
I'm in Virginia.
You're in Virginia. Okay. So out here in California, they were homeschooling back in the 80s when it was basically illegal to be homeschooling. And they've kind of then ended up being the people who kind of grandfathered it into homeschooling almost, and then helped other people figure out how to homeschool and created a whole program. They got an umbrella school that's been around forever and all that. But yeah, they introduced me to Dorothy and Raymond Moore and John Holt and some of these people. I didn't know if you had heard of them or not, but it since you haven't, it doesn't matter, to be quite frank, at this point. But okay, so you you went from being a public school, you were educated in pedagogy in okay, and then you decided you're going to homeschool. What you did mention that your son all of a sudden started hating it. What age was he, and why did he hate it?
He had a really rotten teacher,
Okay,
and he was in fourth grade.
okay.
So he just had a teacher that didn't like boys.
Mm,
So we pulled him out. And then when we pulled him out, we didn't know what we were going to do
mm,
because, I could use the curriculum that he was using at the school, but I never liked that from the beginning. So I didn't want to continue with that. But there weren't a lot of, traditional back then was the way to go. Everybody just did traditional. And I'm a renegade, so I tend to think outside the box. And so one of
mm.
my first desires was to have something where we could do it together.
Oh,
I didn't want this child to do work in this cubby and this child to be in this cubby. I wanted to homeschool as a family.
mm.
And so, in our area, there were some women who I knew who had Susan Wise Bauer. I don't know if you've ever
I
heard of
do.
her.
Yeah, absolutely.
She had written the book Well Trained Mind,
Mm,
and she's from our area. She's from not far from here. She's a couple
mm,
hours away, and she knew some of these women, and they got together with her because they wanted to do the philosophy of the well trained mind at this co-op they were starting, and they wanted to do history and literature together chronologically like the well trained mind book said. But
mm,
there wasn't story of the world at this point. There wasn't any real props, but they decided, she gave them their blessing, and so they created a guide that just lined up history books with literature books, and the history options that they had were things like the Cambridge Encyclopedia. And I mean, they didn't have a lot of good options.
mm,
And trying to take traditional textbooks and kind of manipulate them so you read it in chronological order instead of in order. And then they added in literature books, and a lot of their literature books were really good. Some of them not so good, but they didn't have a lot of choices back then. Um, so they started the co-op, and I was still had my son at the private school because I knew these women. I knew that what they were doing, but I was like poo-pooing it because I wasn't going to do that.
mm.
Well, then when I started homeschooling, then I bought that guide and started doing it with my kids, and loved it. It was fun. They enjoyed reading history and literature, and by that point, the story of the world, the first book had come out, and they'd scoped it in to the guide, although their scoping was kind of rough because they didn't know how she was going to scope anything. And so so it was kind of, you read 5 chapters this week and nothing the next week is how it worked out. But
Mm.
anyway, I did it with my kids, and then I got involved in that co-op, and they needed a history teacher. And so I volunteered, and started teaching using that guide. And I started taking the guide, and then it was a guide. I needed timelines, I needed games, I needed activities, I needed maps, I needed questions, I needed all the things to go with it. And
Mm.
so I started making all of these things. And the lady who owned the guide, because the original ladies had sold it to another lady, the lady who owned the guide had a child in my class, and he's bringing home all this stuff, and she knew I was using the guide, and so she calls me up and asks me what I was doing. And I said, well, because I wasn't just taking the guide, I was actually changing the scope and sequence because I didn't like the way it was. And she was like, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm just tweaking it a little bit. And she was like, well, I love what you're doing. Can we work together? And so at first I worked for her, and then we partnered, and then my husband and I ended up just buying the company
Oh,
from
wow.
her because
Okay.
we got more passion and vision than she did. She was just happy with the guide, and I wanted to do more. One of our desires was to provide the history, because the story of the world was great, but it was little and it didn't have a lot of history in it. It was for kindergarten through third, fourth grade, and then after that, what are you going to do?
Mm.
And my kids were getting older, and I wanted more history, and so we started writing, and that's kind of how we got our foot in the door.
Yeah,
So, and all the
amazing.
time though, I was teaching it. And so everything that I was producing was being taught and field tested. And, so that kind of makes us pretty unique in that all of our material is born out of a co-op,
Yeah.
um, where I'm teaching it and working with kids. And so,
Really neat. So what year are we talking? When did you buy that from her?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
That's a loaded question. BiblioPlan has been the company guide has been around for like 23 years, 22,
Wow.
23 years, and it was maybe 17 years ago,
Okay.
18 years ago when I started getting involved, and maybe I worked for her for about 3 or 4 or 5 years. I don't know,
Okay.
somewhere in there. And then so we've had the company for about 12 years,
Wow.
something
Okay.
like that.
Amazing.
So
Yeah, no, that's quite a story. That's so neat. You know, Susan Weiss Bauer. It's kind of a
I
legend
don't
to
know
me.
her. They
Oh,
did.
oh, oh,
I
okay. So you
I don't.
never.
No, I
Okay.
never did. They met with her. I didn't. I wasn't in the picture at that point.
Okay. Yeah, she's a
So
pretty smart gal. She
yeah.
really is, and I could tell you are too. Yeah, it's you know, it's listening to you talk like, all right, this lady, she knows a thing or two. I could tell. Okay, so history is your thing. Looking at your website, I could see you like to blend in, you know, biblical kind of components. Biblical. Are you blending in like like biblical history, or are you doing
Yep.
more like, okay, so it's more that, not necessarily the biblical principles or theology, but more just the history and blending that in?
Well, so it's Bible church history. So you are going to get theology.
Yeah.
You are going to get it as you tell the history story. So we're weaving the Bible history and the church history and the missionary history into the history. So it's
Mm,
kind of just it's all what happened. This is
yeah.
what happened. And so you get to line up the Bible, especially in like ancient history. When you do that year, you get to line up your Bible history with your ancient history, and you kind of get to see, oh, now I understand why
Mm,
this was happening, because this was happening in the ancient world, and this was happening at the same time in the biblical story. And so you get to weave them together. You get the church history, and then you watch the church history unfold. And we don't people when people talk about church history, they usually think Reformation,
yeah,
and
that's part
that's
of it
what they
anyway. Yeah.
that's kind of when you think about teaching kids church history, usually they just
Okay.
jump right to the Reformation.
Mm,
We start at the beginning. We're
mm,
at the beginning of Acts, and we do the church history. So
yeah.
they get to meet a lot of the giants of the faith. They get to read and learn about the issues that the church struggled with, and you know, the church persecuted, and the church out in public, and after Constantine,
Yeah.
and then Islam rising, and all of the and they're wrestling with a lot of the church history questions and issues. But our books itself are just history. But
Yeah.
then we do have a discussion guide that gives prompts for talking about it, and discussing it with the kids, and just, you know, wrestling with it as a family. So, but they do
Yeah.
learn a lot of theology, you know,
Yeah.
as you're talking about, you know, Catholicism, and then Protestantism, and then the different branches
Arianism and
that
all.
go
Yeah.
out. Yep, all of
Mhm.
that, and then
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah, no, it's good. That's really good. Yeah, because that's the kind of stuff that for me personally, history that give you the ideas that underline it, you know, the kind of the what do they call it? The sociology of ideas, or right, the history of ideas, how ideas, what ideas were present at the time, and how they affected the history itself, how they affected, you know, if I'm thinking this way about the world, how does that affect how I behave in this world? And then so those ideas sort of lead to certain outcomes or whatever. I really enjoy that stuff. Would you say that that kind of thing's in there too? Like the ideas are connected
I
to the
mean,
history,
it's
or
inherent.
okay.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Our 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 history is not dry. I
Mm,
don't. I hated history in school.
mm,
I was not a history major. I considered
okay.
history to be the driest subject,
Yeah.
because school history for me was you read the textbook, and you answer questions, and you take tests, and you promptly forget everything that you've memorized,
Yeah.
because that's traditional. What appeals to me about a classical type history or Charlotte Mason type history is that it's story based. You're
Yeah.
reading history as story, and so all of our history that we've written, all of our books that we've written, are story based. So the kids are they're going in deeper than just, this event happened, this is the name of the battle, and this is the time period. They get to actually um, learn about the events and the blood and the guts and the gore, and
Yeah.
why did, who fought who, and that's much more appealing to kids. They like the blood, guts, and gore. They like to
Yeah.
know what the details are. They like to know, the intrigue and the funny parts and so, and we try to bring that out to make it interesting.
Cool.
So,
That's good. You touched on Charlotte Mason, and I confessed to you before we started that I am a Charlotte Mason ignoramus. I've definitely heard the name, and I feel like I've heard people kind of like highlight some of the things about it, but I've just never really like dove into that for some reason. Can you explain to me what Charlotte Mason is in general, but also like why it matters for history? Like I'm curious,
so
you know.
can because I want to back up and because we are not just Charlotte Mason, we're also classical.
Yeah.
And when I first started using BiblioPlan, it was classical. It was called a classical history and literature curriculum,
Oh,
and that and in classical, you're studying history in order, and ancients, medieval, early modern, and modern, and you're weaving other subjects in pure classical. You would weave in your Latin and your and all of those things. We don't do that at BiblioPlan, but we weave in geography, Bible history, church history, all of that. We do arts, crafts, writing. All of that is woven in, and the focus of classical is to get your kids critically thinking. In For me, thinking critically, Christian worldview, wrestling with issues, all of that. Well, so we kept classical. We stayed in the classical track. And then a number of years ago, probably about 8 years ago, I got hold of a Charlotte Mason book and started reading it. And as I was reading it, I was like, okay, because not everything that I do is purely classical. I'm very hands-on. I'm a teacher,
yeah.
and my students come into my class and they say, "Mrs. Null, what are we going to do today?" They don't ask me what I'm going to teach them, and so I'm very much hands-on. Having kids enjoy it. I want them to think critically, but I also want them to love history.
Mm.
And so when I was reading the Charlotte Mason, which is very child friendly, very much child focused, very hands on. I was like, well, that's exactly what we do. Plus, Charlotte Mason also does history in order, and she wants you to read literature to get your history. Now,
Mm.
in a pure Charlotte Mason, you would not have a textbook. You would not have a
Yeah.
book. Or if you do, she wasn't completely against textbooks, but what she was against was when you had textbooks that are written by committees that are just out there and they're piecing this book together, and it's all just kind of I don't know how you would say, not passionate.
Hmm.
She wasn't against textbooks that were written by someone who was passionate about the
Wow.
subject. So I don't think she would look at our textbooks and what we've written and be upset, because they are very they're very passionate. Um they're we care about the subject, and we're interested, and we also are story based. But so with Charlotte Mason, you read literature, quality literature called living books. Um, and so that's kind of how we are Charlotte Mason. Very kid friendly, very living book focused. um, Charlotte Mason does a lot of notebooking, which we also have notebooking. They do a lot of copy work. um, they do narration. So instead of writing answers to a question, you would narrate what you read and talk about it. We tend to lean more classical with that, because we do have questions that the kids answer. So that we're kind of, on the fence in that one. But so does that help?
Yeah, yeah, no, it does. I think that's great. So then what would you say is classical then for the person who doesn't know? Like what defines that more? I know you said stuff about critical thinking. What is usually when I hear people talk about critical thinking, the way they use the word is something like I'm right, you're wrong because you don't use critical thinking, you know? Like
No,
so
critical thinking would be to think deeply.
Yeah.
to look at something, to look at it from all sides, to be able to debate and to be able to discuss and to me, it's challenged thinking. You think you look at something and you think about it and you consider it from different angles and you come up with hopefully a Christian worldview from it.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, classical to me is I want my kids to um to be wise in their understanding. I want them to hear the history and I want them to be able to look back and see where we came from and to see where we're going. I want them to see the patterns in history. I want them to understand the different like philosophies of I want them to know what the isms are, socialism and capitalism. I want them to understand what the world religions are. I want them to be able to compare and contrast what
Hmm.
they believe against the backdrop of the world religions that are there. I want them to be challenged in their faith. So that would all fall under the umbrella of critical thinking.
Yeah.
Socratic method, getting your kids to think. And there's different stages. Some of the classicals go, the grammar stage kids are the ones that are memorizing and they're being exposed to it, and they're learning the facts. And then your logic kids are learning how to argue, and then your rhetoric kids are learning how to be able to process it and in debate format and all of that. So
So is that kids born rhetorical and a kids born logical, or explain that part to me? You say like a kid who's at the logical phase, is that are you referring to they're just naturally gifted in that, and that's what or they just in their stages of development,
in the
or
stage of development, they're
yeah.
in middle school kids,
Okay.
they're logical. They
Yeah.
think logically, they argue logically. They're moving from concrete to more abstract, and so their brains are changing. So
Yeah. Okay.
and your high school kids need to learn how to articulate and speak and be able to say what they believe.
Yeah.
So
So for the uninitiated, for the new homeschool parent, why should they not be completely freaked out by what you just said? Because they think to themselves, I don't know how to do this. It sounds like a lot, like, because obviously you started in that position. I started in
yep.
that position. We've survived it. But like, what do you say to someone like that? Hey, like, what would your advice be to that person who just, because everything you said there is pretty impressive to me. And it sounds like, I don't know why anyone would be like, yeah, I don't want my kid to be able to answer those questions or think like that. I don't know anyone that would say that, but I could imagine that there's people going, how the heck am I going to get them there though? How do I do that? I don't know any of that. I don't know what an ism is, you know? What do
But
you say to
that
that?
okay, so number one, you're learning with them.
Mm,
In homeschooling, I learned so much just walking around beside my kid. The only thing that made me better than them was that I had the answer key. As long as mom has the answer key, I can do math, I can do science, you've got that answer key and they don't have it. So that makes you look very smart.
yeah.
So that's my number one thing that I tell parents who are freaked out is you have the answer key. You can look real smart with that thing because I did. I'm terrible in math. I'm just don't give it to me. But I can get that answer key out and I can look and see, oh, this is how your problem's supposed to look like, and this is where you made your mistake. And it's not because I'm brilliant, it's because the answer key told me
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So yeah, like for history, the number one thing that you're doing is you're sitting and doing it with your child,
Yeah.
and you're reading it together and you're learning it together and you're having fun together.
Yeah.
And so our curriculum is designed so that you cycle through history three different times. So you cycle through in kindergarten, up from like kindergarten or first grade up to fourth grade, one time
Mm.
through
Wow.
ancients, medieval, early modern, and modern.
Wow.
And you're just sitting and reading the book, you're reading literature books, you're enjoying it, you're learning. And then you cycle again, fourth through eighth grade. And so you cycle through that same thing. You're just going in deeper. They're reading more
Wow.
involved books. And then in high school they cycle again. So I'm not expecting and expected to know it all. I don't even remember it. I helped write the books and I have to go back and, oh, I remember that story again.
Yeah.
I can't retain it all in my brain.
Yeah.
But each week I'm reading a little portion to my kids, and we're looking at it, and we're reading it, and we're enjoying it, and we're talking about it. And when my husband used to come home before he got involved in the company, we would tell him what we read, and the kids would be all excited. And then we would sometimes go watch a movie about it or go do something different. With our curriculum, we give you lots of ways that you can expand. We tell you what movies line up with the history, so
Oh,
that's
yeah.
fun. But and you're reading literature books, so it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
I'd be more intimidated by doing a science curriculum by myself. I always
Yeah.
did it at the co-op, so I had
Yeah.
help,
Me
than
too. Me
doing
too.
history, because
Mm.
history is, if it's story based, you're just reading the story,
Hmm.
and you're thinking about it, and you're talking about it, and there's a discussion guide that we provide that gives you ideas of what to ask, and it gives you answers of what you ask a question that you can get answers from. But and I have so many parents come to me, and they were deer in the headlights when they started. I don't know if I can do this, looks so hard. And then after the first week, they're like, oh, this is super easy. It's just really open and go. You just open the book up, you read the chapter, you do the maps, which are really fun. Our maps are very kid friendly.
Mm.
Answer the questions. We cut our little pieces out for our timeline. We do a craft if we want to, and then that's it. And
Mm.
it's not hard.
Yeah.
And the amount of learning that the parent does is so much fun, because they come back. I learned so much. The parent will tell me. They
Yeah.
learn, especially when they do ancient history or church history. I didn't know all of this, or the fun thing about our year 3 and our year 4, early modern and modern, is that we're not traditional. So
Mm.
we don't separate out US history from world history. So
Okay.
the kids get to learn US history, thorough US history, but they get to learn it side by side with world history every
Mm.
time.
Okay.
And parents love that, because oh, now I understand why, because a lot of parents did US history all the time when they were
Mm.
growing up, because and when I was in school, that's all we ever really did. I
Yeah.
don't remember much of anything else, just different time periods of US history over and over again,
Yeah.
almost ad nauseum. For me,
Yeah.
it was. Um, but when you get to study the world history, and you're like, oh, now I understand why the pilgrims, what time period they came in, and what was
Mm.
going on over there, and now I understand, and and then they get to compare and contrast,
Yeah.
and how much fun to be able to compare and contrast, like the American Revolution with the French Revolution. And the kids will read about the French Revolution, and they're like, oh, that was very different than our revolution,
Hmm.
because they were chopping off heads of the
Hmm.
people in their own country.
Yeah.
So super fun, not intimidating. It
Yeah.
sounds it, but it's not. And if you jump in, even if like you're like, okay, I've got a high schooler and I'm jumping into this the first time, you can still enjoy it, because again, it's story based.
Yeah.
So even the high school book is still story based, so you're just reading more involved parts of the story.
Okay.
So you're not going to be like overwhelmed or sinking in, like if I jump into a biology book and I'm sinking, or math, I'm sinking. But in history, it's story, so you're just reading the stories.
Yeah. No, it's really good. So one of the things that jumps, I just told a recent guest how when I was okay, so those mentors I already mentioned to you, and I here I was the bozo who just wanted to play video games, right? I literally, it was probably around 32 years old when I met them. Now I wasn't a complete bozo that whole time just playing video games. Don't get me wrong. I'd already started kind of evolving, but I still was, yeah, it wasn't 8 years of being just a gamer while my kids, I don't know what they were doing, right? But no, it wasn't that. But I still didn't read. I still wasn't really educating myself at that point. And they came along and changed that drastically. And what they did was have you ever heard of the Uncle Eric series for kids? Whatever happened to Penny Candy or any of that kind of stuff? You ever heard of those? The
I've
little
kind of heard of it, but I don't know that much
Okay.
about it.
Okay. They introduced me to that. And those are books that they do like some economics, whatever happened in Penny Candies about economics. And then
Mhm.
he has some books on like World War I, World War II, Rome. There's just some different things like that. And so it was kind of embarrassing to me to be reading kids' books in a sense, right? Like I was a little embarrassed. Here I am 32 and I'm reading kids' books. But I've gone on to read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books since, right? Like magnum opuses, like crazy stuff, all because of those kid books. And there's something about when you first get started taking a book like that, it's kind of like when you start a 500-piece jigsaw puzzle or something. You're just looking for the corners, right? Something to get the thing started, something that you can start to hang other pieces of the puzzle off
Yep.
of to make it
Mhm.
start to make sense from all the chaos of it. That reading a kid's book can actually really help with that process. It changed. It was kind of life changing for me, to be honest, to start with a kid's book. And so I would imagine for these parents out there who think, "Oh my gosh, that sounds overwhelming," actually, starting out with, especially the younger version of what you're talking about, your program, it's an entry point even for you, where you
Yep.
can take this information. You're taking the more, I don't know, watered down or simplified version of things, so that you can find those corners of the jigsaw puzzle and start getting the edges, right? And then you can, once you start to get the edges, you've graduated a little bit. Now you're starting to do the harder parts on the inside, but you have something to like hang the pieces off of, that you can remember and make things make sense a little bit,
Yep.
So I definitely appreciate that about what you're doing there. That's really cool. And the fact that you cycle through like that is really interesting. I've never heard of that before. That's fascinating.
Well, and the other benefit too is I'm not just doing history, I'm reading.
Yeah.
The kids are reading, they're reading literature books. So
Yeah.
if I'm studying about the Egyptians and I'm reading history about the Egyptians, then the little ones are looking at picture books about the Egyptians.
Yeah.
And the picture books that we pick are just fantastic. They're the best out there. And so you
Okay.
just either get them at the library, or if you want to build your library up, you can buy them on Amazon.
Hmm.
Um, and then the middle kids are reading chapter books and all of that, and then the high schoolers are reading more advanced, sometimes primary source, but it's all on the same subject,
Yeah. No, that's fantastic.
Egypt. And the,
Yeah.
and the nice thing too is that everybody can do it together. If mom
Mhm.
has 5 kids or 2 kids or 10 kids, they can all do the same history time period at the same time. So you're
Yeah.
not like splitting out and saying, oh, this child is now in ancients, but then this child is medieval and this child because of their grade. Everybody, there's no specific grade for any specific year. It's
Mm.
just K to 12. And so you can jump right in and everybody can do medieval together as a family. And the younger kids, you're going to read to the kids. If you have a wide range, like if I have high schoolers and if I have younger kids, then the high schoolers can listen in while mom reads the younger kids book in. They can listen because it's the abridged version.
Okay.
Um, and they can listen in and then they can take their high school book and they can be independent,
Mm.
which is how a lot of families do that. And then the little ones are going to read picture books, and the middle ones are going to read chapter books, and the high schoolers are going to read their classics, and it's but we're all going to be doing it together, and we can do crafts and activities together. We can watch movies together. We can work on timelines together. So it's very family oriented. So mom doesn't have to be tagged into all these different kids doing all these different things.
Yeah. Okay. I
So, and
was
it
gonna.
takes up, if once your child learns to read, then that's your literature program from that point on. You don't have to
Okay.
come up with a separate literature program.
Yeah. Okay. So, can you give me an idea of maybe books that we've all kind of commonly, like household name books that would fall into the,
Eh,
like the little kid would read it, and then the middle, and then the higher, like,
oh my, that's a hard question. Now
it's okay.
I'm going to draw. There's
Yeah.
there's hundreds because
Okay.
our book list is like vast. So, um, golly, okay. So, Cat of Bubastis, for Egypt, um, the Macaulay books, the David Macaulay books are in there. We've got all the Henty books. There's a really popular Chuck Black, who's written. He's real popular with the kids. We've got most of his books scheduled into our curriculum. Um, C.S. Lewis.
Mm.
So I just a lot of the classics, from in high school you're doing like Tom Sawyer and you're doing old Uncle Tom's Cabin, but you're picking and choosing what you want to do.
Mm.
So it's not like I buy a box of books that I have to do the ones in the
Yeah.
box. Ours is more like a buffet.
Okay.
So I can look at the wide range of options, and I'm picking, oh, this child would really like this book because they're going to get lots of description about the book. And so I'll pick this one for this child, and I'll be able to pick this one for this child. So mom gets to pick the books, or the child gets to pick the books, as opposed to me telling you your child has to read these books, because my kids wouldn't have necessarily wanted to read some of the books that would have been required.
Yeah.
And this way you get to pick.
I love
So
that so much. So are you saying then that you have a list of books and then they're going to go out and they're hunting
yes,
their own book down. It's not
yes,
they're not ordering it through you. They're going to go get it
yes.
elsewhere. Yeah,
So
okay.
for history, we provide everything you need.
Okay.
History is open and go. All the history parts are there. If you want
Mm,
to add in other spines like Story of the World, you can, but you don't have to. But for history, it's open and go. For literature, it's pick and choose.
mm,
So
okay.
that way I'm not picking and choosing for you. And I liked that myself when I was doing it. That's one of my favorite parts, because nobody, I just come from a school where they picked for my kid, and he was so bored with the books that they had picked, he had lost his desire to read.
Mm,
Once we
okay.
started picking for him, and he picked, it was like it changed his whole attitude, because now he's reading books that are interesting, and we're picking books that would meet his personality and his desire for drama, and all of
Mm,
that. And so that's why I like a mom being able to pick, because you know your own kids, you know your kids better than me, so I can
yeah.
give you five choices and then you pick one.
Yeah.
And I give two, three, four, five choices each week for being able to pick.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
So
Yeah, there are certain natural advantages that a homeschool mom or dad or whatever have um when it comes to educating their kids, right? Like they didn't go get the degree, but I almost feel like it's you I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I almost feel like the degree that the education experts get is more just to try to catch up with the natural advantage that the homeschool mom, parents have over their kid. They have to compensate in a sense for the fact that they're going to have 30 kids in their room, in their classroom. They're not going to be able to there's something about that love that a parent can give to their kid that is so important for their development. So, and a teacher can't quite come close to that. And then there's what you're saying, which is, I know you, kid. I know you. And I'm going to make sure I create an environment for you that you can thrive in and enjoy and find refreshing and energizing and inspiring and all that kind of stuff. So I like what you're doing there, because it allows for that flexibility where the parent can, they're not relinquishing, because okay, when I think curriculum, a lot of times what I think is like a square box and you're slamming this circle into this square box, and it's like you're gonna do it no matter, we gotta check off all the the boxes and get through this thing, right? And what I like what you're saying is yours is, it's got that flexible thing, and it's not just flexible in terms of you being able to customize it, but it's also hey, there's developmental stages here, and we're gonna make sure that we're not creating so much friction for these kids that it's a miserable experience. Like we want it to be something they can enjoy and more freely flow with it and stuff. So I love that. I think it's great. Really good. um so then what was the other thing I want to ask you about that stuff? Okay, so you had the literature. So actually that's what I want to do. I want to I want to kind of like back up just a little bit and ask you, what was your, I know it's going to seem like we're going really in a really weird direction at this point, but I know you homeschooled. What was your education like as a child? Like were you public schooled or
I was
private
I
school?
was private schooled and public schooled. I was both, so I got to flavor both worlds.
Yeah.
Um, I was um, I was the kind of student who I loved to read. I loved to read, and I was more interested in reading books than I was in checking in at school. So at school,
Mm,
I was checked out because my books were more important to anything that they were teaching me. I had to do the work and I had to pass, but I was more interested in reading. And but again, back to my whole history was boring.
mm,
One, because it was about, what was interesting was that most of the books that I read were history related. When I
okay.
look back and I see, I mean, I read the Bobbsey twins and the Hardy Boys and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but I was also reading a vast amount of biographies and autobiographies and missionary stories
Oh,
and all of these kinds of stories that are very history based, but nobody ever took those history books that I was reading and lined them up with the history we were doing in school. If they
Mm,
had, it would have made a big difference. It would have said, hey, you just read this book about, Gladys Aylward. Well, this is the story of China. This is what was happening in China at the same time. That would have meant the world to me.
mm,
That would have made it come much more alive. But nobody ever did that. Mine was eclectic reading, and
mm.
history was just dull.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I
So,
had a really hard time with history. It felt like it was just like no, like you're slamming dates into my head, but what do I care? And names and dates, right? It was names and
yep.
dates, and I do not care. What do I care? Um, yeah, I agree. But and I love history now. I do. I think it's fantastic, along with a lot of other subjects. And what happened for me was so I had kind of grown up. I hated school with a passion, but I grew up with kind of like a troubled childhood. My mom was a drug addict. My dad was a drug addict. My dad bailed on me. There was a lot of instability in my life until my mom got saved, and then things started to change. But there was some damage done there, and school was really hard for me to like assimilate to, and it just didn't fit me at all. And so I had this really bad taste in my mouth. But I always kind of came away with a message like, I'm dumb. I'm a dummy. I wasn't getting good grades. I wasn't applying myself, but to me, it was just confirmation I was dumb. And all the other kids, the kids who did good were smart, and I was just born dumb. And, you know, it just tainted reading and learning and the whole shebang. So there was actually not a subject I liked other than PE. That was the only one I would have ever told you I like PE. And so it wasn't until later on in life where I realized, oh, part of the issue that I had was actually being forced to learn all kinds of stuff at a on other people's timing in other people's ways, and being graded according to whether or not I'm retaining at least short term information according to other people's requests, and making other people happy. It was just all about making other people happy, and it wasn't anything about me being able to discover things and learn things and figure out what I enjoyed and any of that kind of stuff. But so with that said, what do you do with as a home? Do you have any tips for, like, especially within the context of your curriculum? What does a parent do when they have that kid? Maybe they pulled him out, like kind of what you did with your child. He's already been in school for 4, 5, 6 years or whatever it is. They have this tainted view of education, like I did, right? They hate it. They're stubborn. I was stubborn. I missed probably 20, 30, 40 days a year of school because I fought my mom every day. I would hide my shoes. Mom, I can't find my shoes. That anything I could do to get out of going to school. So she was dealing with that from literally day one of kindergarten all the way through. And what do you do with a kid who's just kind of like done with it and doesn't want to like sit down and go along with the program? What do you do with that kid? You have any tips for that?
um, yeah, I mean, you pick out what's the most important.
Hmm.
A lot of people think when they come into it that they've got to do everything because they do everything in school, then I have to do everything at home. Um, I tell parents that basically the two most important subjects are teaching your child to read and math. Those are the two things that you're going to kind of need in the long term. I got to be able to read and I got to be able to, to do math, basic math. Um, After that, everything else should be hands-on and it should be engaging and it should be fun and for a mom like that, I would say one of her options up until like eighth or ninth grade is to unschool,
Mm,
which would be figure out what is it that your child is really interested in and go in that direction, and if they don't like to read, then you have the option of audiobooks
mm,
and, sit or read to them or, read alouds, all of that, and audiobooks are a great way to get good quality books into your child's brain without having to make them sit down and read a book.
yeah.
Um, if you have options to go to like a co-op where they can be around other kids, because a lot of homeschool co-ops, the focus at the co-op is doing fun things.
Mm,
The focus at the co-op is doing the science projects and there's PE usually at a co-op and there's art projects. And so that would be a good option. Find a co-op where they're doing a lot of hands-on focused kinds of activities. Um, And I would just, your most important are your reading and your math. And I know I'm a history person. Um, History should be fun. It should be story based. It should be engaging. There's my little girl.
Hello, how are you,
Mary, you want to
sweetie?
say hi?
How are you?
No, I don't go hi.
Okay, you can say hi.
Hi, how
Hi,
you?
how are you, sweetie? You
I'm
good?
good.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
awesome.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
every day.
Go on back out there. Okay. Thank you.
I'm good. Awesome.
My little girl has autism and epilepsy, so
Yeah,
she's definitely her own person,
yeah,
and
yeah.
we have to go with the flow with her.
I get it. No, we're on board. She is welcome. That's awesome. I forgot where we were though. That's
So we were talking about, how do you deal with a child who's just checked out?
yeah, yes,
Um,
yeah.
so I would consider just finding what are they checked into, and if it's video games, let's find something else besides the video
Yeah,
games.
yeah,
But what are they interested in? And then go with that. If they are interested in science, or if they're interested in rockets, then go with it. If they like stuff on World War I or World War II, then go
mm,
start there.
yeah,
Start where they are and go from there.
yeah.
Um, so
So yeah, so like then in the context of your curriculum,
in the
so let's say
context of our curriculum, we're super flexible.
yeah,
We're like we kind of cater to every kind of kid. So like we
yeah.
have an entire part of our website called Tips and Tricks, and it
Okay.
gives you all kinds of things you can do to adapt our material
Oh,
for kids. And a lot of those ideas are great for kids that are like really resistant, because
mm,
they're games and fun things that you can do. Um, we also have created over the since COVID, we started doing classes online.
mm,
And I, because I'm a teacher, because I tend to be very visual, I've created classes that are very visual and very engaging. So, it's not like the kids are sitting there and I'm just sitting lecturing, and it's a black and white boring screen. My older son teaches with me. He's the one that everybody loves. The kids all think he's just the bomb. When I
that's
teach,
funny.
they're like, "Oh, it's just Miss Julie." But when Ben's teaching, it's like, "Oh, it's Ben." But
That's
anyway, I
funny.
can't help it. But I taught him how to teach, so I get points for that.
That's
Um,
right.
but but everything is very engaging. So it's videos, and so I have a lot of moms that have kids with ADHD,
Yeah,
um, that love our classes because they're not bored. They're
yeah.
engaged. It's yes, it's looking at a screen, but it's an hour class or an
Mm,
hour and 15 minutes. So it's once a week. So it's not
oh,
overwhelming.
yeah.
And we do a really fun review of the chapter, so they can listen to the chapter ahead of time, and they can answer questions and do the maps, and then they come to class and they get to engage with other students. And they get to annotate. We give them the rights to annotate on the board, and so they can draw. They're always annotating. In fact, sometimes we have to tell them put the annotating away.
Yeah.
But they do. We provide opportunity throughout the class for them to be able to get that going, because that's a really fun thing for a lot of kids to do. And at the end
Absolutely.
of each class, we do some kind of a craft or game or activity that the kids look forward to, just to make it fun. Even the high schoolers do that. We're more serious with the high schoolers, but they do something fun in every class. And, whether it's just go in here and discuss and come up with some, a letter that this person would have written, from the perspective of, and the kids enjoy stuff like that. So,
Okay. And it
um,
being online, I assume they can find it on your website and anyone in the
yes,
country can
anybody in
join.
the world.
In the world, you're going even to the okay.
Well, we've had students from different countries take the class.
Okay.
So they just have to are ones that some of them have to get up super early and some of them have to get up
Yeah.
late. But we also have a taped version, so you
Okay.
can watch a self-paced version, so that if you
Oh,
are
nice.
overseas or whatever, you can watch the class.
Okay. And
So
what about like do you is this for like a parent who's trying to like meet their state standards? Would you say that, or was this like, hey, look, we're not really catering to if you're trying to meet state standards, you're gonna have to like find a whole different avenue than what we
you
offer.
can you can meet state standards with us. Like for high school, you can absolutely meet. It's going to be done differently, but you can
Yeah.
meet it. You can
Okay.
get world history, world geography. You can get U.S. history. We don't do government, but we do recommend a specific book that you can use.
For
And you
government.
can for
For
government.
government. Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
We even schedule it in for them to do that. You can get literature. You can get your English literature class credits. We have a classes for that, so they can take and get writing and literature classes for high schoolers, so they can get those credits. So you can check the boxes. We don't do stuff like Colorado history, and some states require a year of their specific state.
Gotcha.
So parents have to find that out, find one of those on their own. But for the most part, the history that we do fits, you know, it's not like, okay, in eighth grade, you have to do US history. It's going to be jimmy rigged a little bit. You're going to do it at a different time, but
Mm.
you're homeschooling.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's funny you say.
So
Yeah, that's one of the things. Sometimes the words are contracted. Homeschool. It's like people think that you're schooling at home sometimes a little too much, right? But it's
yeah,
actually a different word. Homeschooling means
I was
something a little
actually
different.
type A.
Okay.
When I had my older boys, I was very type A. I wanted to check every box and do
Yeah.
everything perfectly. And I look back now and I realized the biggest piece of advice I could give anybody is that it doesn't count until eighth grade.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Up
Yeah.
until then,
Yeah.
it doesn't count. You can
Yeah.
have fun, you can enjoy, you can go to the park, you can take a day off, take a week off.
Yeah.
You are, for those first 8 years of school, you are just providing stimulation for your kids, and you're just exposing them to all of these subjects, so that when they get to high school, they can master them and get counted so they can graduate. But
Yeah.
up until eighth grade, nobody out there looks at your transcript before
Mm-hmm.
eighth grade. And if
Yeah.
you wanted to hold until ninth grade, you can do that too. If you want to start eighth grade in high school, if you want to start eighth grade and ninth grade, high school and ninth grade, then you've got up until eighth grade to just relax. And I knew a family. There were doctors, both of them,
Wow.
and they had a boatload of kids. They had probably 10 kids. And when I first started homeschooling my son, she told me, she said, we don't homeschool, we unschool. We
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
do anything. And
Yeah.
I looked at her cross-eyed, like, I don't think I could
And
do
these
that.
are
I'm type A.
doctors, and these are
These were
doctors saying it,
these were
you
doctors
know?
saying
Yeah.
that they never formally did anything with their kids until they
Yeah.
went to eighth grade. Because
Yeah.
she was the one that told me it doesn't count until eighth grade. So they never formally did anything up until their child hit eighth grade.
Yeah.
But everything that their kids were interested in, they got interested in. And so that's when they would go crazy. So like if this child wanted to learn about rockets, then they would learn about rockets. They'd
Yeah.
make rockets. They'd buy books about rockets. They'd watch videos about rockets. And that's how they schooled them.
Yeah.
And they just went in whatever direction their kids wanted to go. When they went to eighth grade, when they got to eighth grade, they put them in a very elite private school, not Christian, but private school. And I mean, it was one of these schools where most of the kids are coming out there. They've been, major schooled coming through, and they get into this school, and all of her kids got in the school, and they all thrived, and they all graduated with honors and went on to college. And she's like, doesn't count until eighth grade. And before
Yeah.
that, you're just stimulating their brains,
Yeah.
reading lots and lots and lots and lots of books, um,
Yeah.
just enjoying it.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Yeah, my mentors always kind of say it's a race to 18, which to your point, what they say is, look, your kid might not know, because they're trying to kind of get young kids that age, maybe kindergarten, first grade, whatever, to know like some real early algebraic kind of abstract kind of math thinking, right? And it's like they should not even be dealing with that kind of abstract thinking at such a young age. And so, but the thinking behind it a lot of times is, well, we got to get it to them early, give them a head start, get them going, right? And what my mentors always say, and to your point, what you're saying is like when they're eighth grade or ninth grade or whatever it is, they're gonna learn that kind of math so stinking fast. Like when they need to sit down and learn that early algebraic stuff or fractions or whatever, it's gonna be a cinch. They're gonna learn it so easy at that point. But we like try to like cram all this stuff into our kids when they're young, and they're not really, and they really are more just designed. I don't know if you've ever read Peter Gray's work at all, but Peter Gray is really big on play. And when he defines play, it's
Yep.
like just unstructured play. It's like adults just kind of get out of the way and let them use their imaginations and
Yep.
and just play. And so and he's saying just like how zebras when they play by running away from each other and doing that kind of thing because they're playing to what they need to do to survive as adults, right? Lions play fight, right? They like bite each other and they do all this stuff. They chew on their daddy's leg and all this kind of stuff. And because they're playing to what they need to do when they become an adult. Well, kids do the same thing, but
Yep.
we never let them do it, right? And this
Yep.
is the stuff they need to be doing to be healthy, thriving individuals. And we're so busy cramming this stuff down their throats, you know? And
Absolutely agree. I wish
yeah,
I could go back and redo my first two. I
yeah,
absolutely wish I could go back. I mean, I did some things right. I was really big
true.
on no TV or electronics the whole school week. We
Yeah,
didn't do anything Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And we didn't do any electronics until the weekend
yep.
because I wanted them to play. But I pushed too much.
Hmm.
There was a part of me that was very proud that I had smart kids. And so I pushed and I would, if I look back, I'm like, what's the point?
Yeah,
What's the point of having my 10th grader take college classes?
yeah,
Because that doesn't let them be kids.
yeah,
I'd love to go back and have a big redo with my two oldest and just let them be kids and let
yeah,
them, enjoy stuff and do
yeah.
stuff so
Yeah, that's the funny thing about it. Me playing video games the whole time was I was probably doing it right, wasn't I? Just let them do whatever they know. I'm just kidding.
no,
But
I'm
yeah,
not big on video
I
games.
know.
I
I'm just me
That's not
either.
my thing.
I'm not either. Well, I'm not saying I don't ever enjoy them. And it's funny. Some of my favorite memories as a child were actually playing video games with my father. I didn't have very many memories with him, but whenever I saw him on occasion, he did like video games. So it was like the only way we could connect. And so I have very, very fond memories of playing video games with my dad. And then and so when it's social like that and you're actually sitting next to each other and you're laughing, you're playing and
Yep.
you're elbowing each other and doing this kind of stuff, it's different than just sitting in your room by yourself playing online with and even still you got to like really moderate it and not have it be too much because I think there's a false sense of accomplishment in a virtual world like that. Like I think all of us, we need to have a sense of direction and goal and an aim in our life. And and that's the kind of thing that kind of keeps us alive, right? Like we need to have an aim. And when we don't have an aim, we can fall into just depression and anguish, loathing our lives and why am I even alive? That kind of stuff. Well, video games give you a false sense of achievement because you beat that level, you feel like you achieved something, but you actually didn't. When you turn it off, you've done nothing. You've
Yep.
done
And you got to
nothing.
go back and do it
Yeah,
again.
yeah, you've done nothing. And your
Yeah.
life didn't actually move forward. Your life, nothing in the real world, nothing meaningful and tangible actually moved forward. That's why I do differentiate between if you're playing socially, at least there's a way you can kind of connect with each other and have fun and have it be interactive. I do see that as different, but too much video games lends itself really well to that false sense of accomplishment, and that I think is a major, major problem. But yeah, so looks like we're done with our time. It looks like we're done with our time, but I feel like there's probably a lot of other things I could ask you, and I do appreciate so much your time. What I
Well,
do want to
thank you
do is
for having me.
yeah, and I do want to give you the opportunity if there's anything that you feel like we didn't say that you're like, dang it, I would have loved to have brought that up or said that. I'll give you the floor. Feel free to, if there's any final thoughts or any, even if it's just like final piece of advice to a parent. You already just said that bit about I would go back and do it different a little bit, and I think that's probably good enough. But if there's anything, this is your chance, and also how people could find you. What's the best way they could find you? So
So
yeah,
the best way to find me is on my curriculum is called BiblioPlan, which is book plan, not Bible plan. Um, Biblio is Latin for book. So
yep.
biblioplan.net.
.net. Okay. Yep.
Yes.
And then
And
on there, they'll be able to find your socials and all
yep,
anything like that. Okay, cool.
yep, yep.
Great. Great.
So
And then that's it. Yeah. And then if there's anything of any parting where you don't have to, no pressure, no pressure. But if
I'm
there's anything,
thinking,
yeah, no, you're good.
just have fun homeschooling.
Yeah.
Just, learn with your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Connect with them. I think that's to sum it all up. I think so much is just like really, really, really focus on those advantages that you have as a parent, that nobody else can match. Lean into them, especially when you're early on, right? Lean into those advantages, love your kids and connect with them. And nobody can touch that. And there's no greater education, especially early on in their lives, than that. So, yeah. Well, very good, Julie. I said it right. I said it right.
Julie, yes.
I said it right.
All right.
Julie, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. So there you have it, Julie Nalle with BiblioPlan, and I love that moment when her daughter walks in the room and we're able to kind of interact a little bit. That was really fun. We're homeschoolers, right? That's what we do. We love our kids. We love having them be a part of our lives and seeing the things that we do. Whether it be business stuff or hobbies of ours or our struggles, whatever it is. And so I thought that was a really cool moment. I enjoy that kind of stuff. I enjoy kids. So that's it for this week. Again, comment down below. Let us know what you're thinking about everything. If you have any guests that you'd like to see on the show, anything like that, just let us know, and we will. We'd love to hear the feedback and to interact with you. So anyway, that's it for now. Take care.